Okay, so my name is Stephen Curry and I'm a professor of structural biology at Imperial College. And the question is, can society afford open access? And my answer would be most certainly yes. I don't think society can afford not to go open access. Now that may very much be the perspective of someone who's a life scientist like myself. I work in the field of structural biology and I mostly study virus replication mechanisms, which I hope ultimately one day, my work will lead to advances that may help to develop new therapies. And I see dissemination of my results as a vital core part of my job as a researcher. I'm a publicly funded researcher, and so I feel quite acutely the duty to deliver to the taxpayer then access to the research that I've worked on. And I think that providing worldwide free access to the sorts of research that I do is a vitally important aspect of science. I think science and the natural sciences have long been a very international and community-based activity. And actually one of the things that I particularly enjoy about being a scientist is the community feel and in fact the amateur sense that there is still within what is in this day and age of course a very highly professionalized activity. But there is still that amateur ethos in terms of sharing reagents, sharing ideas and discussing things freely. And I think that open access plugs into that ethos extremely well and in an extremely valuable way. And one of the things I hope ultimately to see from a developing open access market is in fact better value for money, because in the long term, if we create proper competition between journals who are providing good services to authors, then we can maybe drive down the enormous prices that we currently pay.
Hello, my name is Dr. Danny Kingsley. I'm the Head of Scholarly Communications here at Cambridge University, and part of my responsibility is to ensure that we comply with the funder requirements for us to make the research that we produce at the university openly accessible to the public. The question we talked about tonight was, can society afford open access? Now that can be a controversial question, but my answer to that question at the moment is no, we cannot, because the way we are trying to make our work open access is extremely expensive. What we are doing is paying to make work open access in journals that are already subscription journals. So we're paying twice for the work. We're paying for the subscription to it and we're paying for the access to that particular journal article. We're also having to pay in terms of the human cost of us making work openly accessible in a repository, because there's a lot of time associated with us putting work into a repository. So the current mechanism we're trying to use to make work open access in our society is too expensive and not sustainable. Some of the people asked today whether the question should be, can society afford work not to be open access? And the answer to that probably is yes, but not the way we're currently doing it. So we need to change the mechanisms by which we make work open access. The funder policies have good intent, but the practicality of actually implementing them is problematic and it's very expensive.
Hi, my name's Theo. I'm Executive Editor of the BMJ, formerly the British Medical Journal. And if you ask me the question, can society afford open access? My answer would be we can't afford to avoid open access. We have a situation where most biomedical research is funded by the public purse in one way or another. Governments, charities, universities are funding research, and then we often publish the research in journals that not everyone can read. And it's time we got to the point where everyone who paid for the research can read it and can see the data underlying the argument and can really benefit from the research directly.
Hi, I'm Daniel Arlington, Associate Professor of Digital Cultures at the University of the West of England. Can society afford open access? Well, I'm absolutely sure that society can afford a form of open access, but I'm equally sure that it can't continue trying to afford the form of open access which has been pushed upon the research community by Research Councils UK. I'm also sure that we can't continue to allow our version of open access to be defined by, for want of a better word, tech industry lobbyists like Lawrence Lessig, the author of the Creative Commons licenses. I think society can definitely afford open access, but only if we stop arguing for and against open access and start talking about specific forms of open access, how they're going to work and who's going to pay for them.
Hello, I'm Peter Mantler. I teach history here at the University of Cambridge and I'm president of the Royal Historical Society. Can society afford open access? Well, I think that's not a very good question. I think society is getting open access, and that is an undilutedly good thing. Academic research should get the widest possible audience that it can possibly get. For me, and I think for humanities scholars in general, the devil is only in the detail. That is, how are we going to provide open access in such a way that academic freedom and academic quality are maintained? And the way not to do that is to adopt rules that were established in the early days of the open access movement by digital artists and science researchers, to apply those rules to the much wider range of works that are now properly coming into the open access regime. What we need to do is we need to hammer out a whole set of new protocols, a whole set of new funding mechanisms that will make all kinds of academic work available to everyone without sacrificing the things that make the academic work worth reading in the first place.